Let me guess, you can't read music. If you could, you wouldn't be here, would you? To be fair, I'd say the majority of bass players can't read. But today, I'm going to change that for you in record time. By the end of this video, you'll be able to read some simple bass lines and you'll have a simple roadmap for learning how to sight read to a professional level. But I'm guessing some of you might be thinking, why do I need to read? Well, you don't. You don't need to read, just like you don't need to play bass at all. But reading music is no different to reading the written word. You can get by without reading. But life's a hell of a lot easier when you can. So in terms of pros and cons, for the pros, 1, you'll be able to read music. That's a pro in itself. It means you'll be able to grab a piece of music and play it without having to hear it first. 2, you'll learn every note on the fretboard to an instinctive level. No more working notes out. 3, you'll have a better understanding of rhythm because you have to learn everything there is to know about dividing and subdividing beats. 4, you'll be able to play the bass without looking. You can't read music and look at the fretboard at the same time, can you? 5, you'll gain a better understanding of music theory because it makes way more sense when dealing with notes rather than fretboard box shapes. For example, intervals might look a certain way on the bass, but describing why and how they are the way they are requires notes, not frets. Then for number 6, you'll be able to jump out from the pack when it comes to taking certain gigs. Sight reading has been a core part of most of the gigs that I've done over the past 30 years, and it allowed me to make a consistent living playing music. I was able to travel the world to places that I never dreamed I'd visit for free. And I also met my wife doing that. So I also have a cool family to show for it. There's a whole bunch of other pros, but those 6 are a good start. But then let's look at the cons. Well, no, there aren't any. So we have a bunch of great pros and 0 cons. Don't you just wish that politics was that easy? So let's get into it. Now remember, this is going to be in record time, so I'm going to go through the stuff fast. Just pause or play back a section if you need to go back over something. So here's a staff or stave. This is what we write our music on. We write the heads of the notes on the lines or spaces, and each line and space represents a note. Then here's a clef. This is the bass clef. This tells us what those notes are. Bass guitar is a low register instrument. The bass clef is for low register instruments. When we use the bass clef, the lines and spaces are as follows. From the bottom line, G, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, A. The open E string on a bass guitar is this E below the staff. That's sat on what we call a ledger line, a temporary line that we can add to the staff for extra notes. And you're going to need those extra notes if you're going to cover all of the notes of a bass. The open strings of a 4-string bass are shown here. We've got E, A, D, and G. If you have a 5-string bass, you might reach down to that B below the staff. When we add rhythms, like this quarter note, we place the note head on a line or space, and that tells us what note to play and how long to play it. Playing up through the notes that you see here, we've got G, B, D, and F. Now, before we start playing bass lines, we just need a few more symbols. First, we need a time signature. This tells us how many beats there are in a bar. This is the most common time signature of 4/4, which is 4 quarter notes in a bar, so just think of it as a fraction. Bars or measures are how we count music, so when you count 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, each of those 4 counts are a bar. So we show the end of a bar with a bar line. Then finally, we need a key signature, and this tells us what key we're in. Key signatures are placed at the beginning of every staff line on a chart. Here we have 1 sharp. That's the key of G major. That's because G major has 1 sharp in it. The G major scale is G, A, B, C, D, E, F sharp. We show that F sharp, and then every F that we see on the chart is going to be sharpened. We don't have to start adding sharps into the music every time we see it. If you see no key signature, it means we're in C major or A minor. But don't worry about that for now. For now, we're just dealing with major keys. Okay, now let's add some rhythms. So let's take a simple bar of 4/4. Here's a whole note, or semi-breve for you Europeans. This is 4 beats in length. So we play a note for 4 beats. So on a C, 3rd fret of the A string, if we're playing a whole note, we have 1, 2, 3, 4. Then you see there a half note or minim, that's 2 beats. A quarter note or crotchet, that's 1 beat. Then we divide the beat up into 8th notes or quavers, 16th notes or semiquavers, 30-second notes, which are demi-semiquavers, and so on. Every time we half a division, we add an extra flag onto the rhythm. Then we can group them together using beams. So now we have some rhythms, let's put them together with some notes. When reading on bass, we have to think in terms of positions, just like a double bass, a violin, a viola, or cello. If we take an A note at the top line, well, that could be this A here at the 2nd fret of the G string, or it could be the 7th fret of the D string, or it could be the 12th fret of the A string, or it might even be the 17th fret of the E string. They're all the same note and pitch, so how do we know where to play it if we just see that A there on the staff? Well, you can write a number over the note if you want to be really specific, so you could write 1 for the G string, or 2 for the D string, and so on. But most of the time, you don't need that. You just read in position. So if I'm in this position down here, then that's A is going to be played there at the 2nd fret of the G string. If my hand's up here, then it's more likely to be played here at that 7th fret of the D string. If I'm all the way up here, it's probably going to be played at the 12th fret of the A string. The good news for bass players is that a lot of bass lines that you play are going to take place in a low position. They rarely go all the way up here. So if you can learn to read pretty well in that low position around the 1st to the 5th frets, then you're well on your way. In all my years of reading professionally, I've spent probably 90% of my time in that first 5 frets. Yes, you do have to venture outside of that area from time to time, but you usually jump back down pretty soon after. Before we get into the bass lines, it is worth mentioning that if you want a complete guide to reading from absolute beginner to sight reading pro, the Simple Steps to Sight Reading course over at TalkingBass is the way to go. 25 hours of video, over 700 pages of exercises, and hours of backing tracks. It's the course I'm most proud of creating, and you won't find a step-by-step method for bass guitar reading like it anywhere. Check out the link in the description for more details, check out all the testimonials in there, and use the code READINGNOW for a 30% discount. Okay, so now we know about the notes and the rhythms, let's learn some simple bass lines. Let's stay in this low area, and we'll first run through the basic notes that we have in there. So if we look at the E string there, we've got open E string, F, G, and A. It doesn't really matter which fingers you use, but I'm using the 1st finger, then the 2nd finger, and then the 4th finger. So play the F with the 1st finger and then just move up into this position. Really, you're going to have your 1st finger roughly around the 2nd fret for most of this, okay? So then A string, B, C, and D. D string we have E, F, and G, and then for the G string, A, B, and C. Okay, so that takes us from the ledger line below the staff all the way to the ledger line above. So that's quite a lot of notes. So just try playing through that pattern of notes. It's basically a C major scale. E, F, G, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C. That's the palette of notes that we're going to be using. And for the first few lines, we're going to stick to the E and A strings. So we have E, F, G, A, B, C, D. That's all the notes of C major in one small area on 2 strings. You know, we've got the E, F, G, A, B, C, D, and then we're back to E, which would be the open string. So we're covering quite a few notes here, just on 2 strings. So let's look at the first bass line. Like I said, we're just playing notes on the E string, and it's just going to be half notes and whole notes. So very, very easy. So look at the first note. What note is that? Well, it's that bottom line. It's a G. So this is what we're doing here. We're looking at the note on the page, and then we're just finding it on the bass. Okay, so every time you have a note, it's like a little test. We've got, what note is that? It's a G, bottom line. There's the G, 3rd fret. Okay, and over time, you're going to become more automated with this. At first, you're going to be working it out. But then the more that you play that G, the more it's going to sink in. The more that line will become that fret. Then what's the next note? Well, it's one above, it's A. So we're going to use the 5th fret of the E string. You could use the open string, but for now we're just going to stick to those fretted notes. You can use the open strings if you need to at any point, but it is good to get to know them on the frets. So what's the rhythm there? We've got 2 half notes, so that's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4. Easy. Then for the second bar, again, it's 2 half notes. So look at that. We have G, same note, that bottom line. Like I said, we're going to be getting used to seeing it. Then we move down one, so that's going to be the F. So, first 2 bars. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now, before we move to the third bar, do not worry about using metronomes or anything like that. You just want to do this in your own time. It doesn't matter if you're out of time. As long as the count is correct and you're getting the notes right, it doesn't matter. Just count with your foot. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Even if the technique's all messed up, at first we're just getting used to seeing those lines and spaces and then just finding the appropriate frets. Now for the third bar, again, bottom line, G, then the A, and then finally back to the G. And for the rhythms, 2 half notes, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then the final bar, 1, 2, 3, 4. Easy. So now try all 4 bars. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now, obviously, you're going to be reading this, so your eyes want to be on the page, not on the bass. So this is where getting used to these positions comes into play. So if you're in position, you look first. Look at what the first note's going to be. It's going to be a G. Look at where that is. Let's say you're playing it with that first finger. You know then that the next one above, the A, would be played with the fourth finger. You could use the third finger, but I would advise using the fourth finger. Back to the G. Now when you move down to that F, it means a little position shift down to the F, but then when you move back up to the G, just bring that hand back up. So we're basically working around this area, G and A there with the first and fourth fingers, and then the F is slightly out of that area, and then we just return. Okay? Now let's just work through the next 4 bars. So there you can see the first note is going to be E, open E string, get used to that one. Then G, that bottom line that we've seen several times, and then the F. Okay? Rhythms again, very simple. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. And because we didn't have to move anywhere up here for this A, I'm playing all just in that first 3 frets using the first and fourth fingers. Okay? And then again, open E, F, and the G. Okay? So those 4 bars. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. So that's a really simple bass line that you can try playing round and round just to get used to those first few notes. So, you know, if anything, you're going to get used to that G, that bottom line, you know, and you want to know that open E. But the more you play around it, watching as you play, you know, always keeping your eye on the page, not the bass, you're going to get used to seeing those notes again and again. Okay, now for the next bass line, we're going to be on the A string. So, look at the first note. It's a whole note, very straightforward. We've played those before, full bar, and it's a C. So that's going to be the 3rd fret of the A string. So again, this is one you really want to get used to because we're in the key of C major, it's the tonic. So we've got C, 2, 3, 4. Then another whole note, and this time we're just moving down 1 note. So what's it going to be? It's going to be B. 1, 2, 3, 4. Then we've got 2 half notes, and you can see the notes there. It's D, C, and then we land on the whole note for the B. Okay? So, all of that 4 bars. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. And again, don't worry too much about the technique. You can use the first finger for both the C and the B if you want to. I'm using the 4th finger for the D there, and then I'm using the 2nd finger and 1st finger for the B as I move down. But don't worry too much about that. Don't worry too much about the technique in that. Just get used to seeing what the notes are on the page and transferring them to the instrument. And then for the next 4 bars, again, we start on the C. 1, 2, 3, 4. Then the B. 1, 2, 3, 4. 2 half notes, both on D. 1, 2, 3, 4, and then whole note on C. Okay, so notice how I'm getting a little bit quicker with this. You know, we're not hanging around wondering about which frets they are. Just get used to seeing those notes and then picking them out. Okay? Now for the 3rd bass line, we're going to mix things up and we're going to combine the E and A strings. So, what's that first note? It's a C for a half note, 3rd fret of the A string. Then we move down to the G, that bottom line that we've seen a few times. Remember, they're both half notes, so 1, 2, 3, 4, and then we've got a whole note on the F. So we're getting used to that F now. We're going to see that more and more. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Then for the next bar, little variation. C and then down to the open E string. And then again to the F. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. So all 4 bars. 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now let's look at the next 2 bars. So what notes do we have there? We've got A, B, C, and B again. Okay, so which A we're going to use? Because remember, we do have a choice. We can either play the 5th fret of the E string or the open A. Let's try the open A. Okay, so that's going to be open A string, 2nd fret, 3rd fret, 2nd fret. So 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, we could have played it 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. It doesn't really matter. You can use either way, but I'm just showing you this as an alternative. And a lot of this is going to be determined by which one seems easier. Sometimes an open string can feel a lot easier, but it will have a different tone to the fretted notes, and sometimes it's harder to cut a note off. You know, there can be technical reasons for not playing an open string because you might not be able to cut it off in time for the next fretted note. So ease of use and position and tone can all play a part, but you will learn how to do this on the fly. And then finally, we finish with whole note on the open E, and then the B for a whole note. So 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, now let's get into some quicker rhythms. Let's try the quarter note, okay? So it's going to be a very simple bass line, this, and we're just going to use quarter notes. So you can see there for those first 3 bars, we've got consecutive quarter notes, and remember, a quarter note we play on each beat. So that'll be 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. If you ever have problems counting rhythms that you see on the page, clap them out separately so you don't have to think about the pitches. So now let's just add the notes. So you can see there, we've got that C. Remember, you want to get used to seeing that space there. That's that C, the tonic there, because we're in C major. C, C, down to the G. Again, it's that G, that bottom line. We've seen it several times. Playing it twice. 1, 2, 3, 4. Down to the F. 1, 2. And then back up to the G. 3, 4. So first 2 bars again. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. And then we just have a repeat. 1, 2, 3, 4. C, C, G, G. And then back to the C for a whole note. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. So all 4 bars. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. And the more that you play through a piece like this, the more you'll start to work out particular fingerings. Okay, so it's not all just laid out for you. You will actually start to develop various ways of moving around based on what you see on the page. Now let's add some 8th notes in there. So 8th notes are counted 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. So we're just adding a note in there, a division. So we've got consecutive 8th notes through most of this line, and you can see that they're beamed there in groups of 4, and we just come down the scale. So you can see that we start on the C, 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 B, B, A, G, G. So 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Remember to count the foot on each beat, not each 8th note. So 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Then down to the F. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Then we have a repeat of that first bar. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and then you can see for that final bar we come up F, G, A, G, C. And C is for a half note. 1 and 2 and 3, 4. So the whole line. 1, 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 4, and. And now finally, let's just add some 16th notes in there. So remember, 16th notes are going to be 4 notes per beat. So if we've got the count of 1, 2, 3, 4, we're going to count 1 E-ander, 2 E-ander, 3 E-ander, 4 E-ander, 1 E-ander, 2 E-ander, 3 E-ander, 4 E-ander. 8th notes would be 1 and 2 and. 16th notes, 1 E-ander, 2 E-ander. So let's look at the rhythms in the first bar. We have 4 16th notes and 2 8th notes. So 1 E-ander, 2 and then 3 E-ander, 4 and. So adding the notes in there, we start on that C again. So we've got 1 E-ander, and then we've got the D and the C on the 8th notes. So 2 and. Then we move down to the G, that bottom line again. So 3 E-ander, 4 and. Okay, A back to the G. So 1 E-ander, 2 and, 3 E-ander, 4 and. Next bar, move down to the F. Same rhythm. 1 E-ander, 2 and, then up to the G, 3 E-ander, 4 and. So that might seem a little bit more difficult because we've added the 16th notes in there, and 16th notes are hard to count at a fast tempo, so it's at a very slow tempo there. But you can see there that learning the notes, the more you do it, the more you'll just start to recognize certain ones, even if it's just a couple at first. You know, you get used to that G, you get used to that C. Gradually, you'll fill in the gaps, okay? Same with the rhythms. You start with very simple rhythms, just whole notes and half notes. Add some quarter notes in there. Add some 8th notes and 16th notes, very basic rhythms. Gradually, you'll start to build it up. So that's the basic symbols, notes, rhythms, and most useful position for getting you started with reading. So check out this video if you want to see how far the Simple Steps to Sight Reading course will take you as I break down one of the etudes from the final level, level 9. You might not be able to play it straight away, but it'll give you a good idea of where you should be after working through the whole course. Remember, you can grab a discount of 30% on the course with the coupon code READINGNOW, and I'll see you next week.